Welcome to Christ Chapel College, the college outreach of Christ Chapel Bible Church in Fort Worth, Texas. We hope everyone experiences what Jesus calls abundant life. So we unapologetically point to him as the source of life and joy. If you're a college student in the Fort Worth area, we'd be stoked to connect with you. Find out more at christchapelcollege.org and on Instagram at Christ Chapel College.
Morning. How we doing? Excited to be with you guys this morning. What an honor and privilege it is to be up here bringing the word to you guys. It's Super Bowl Sunday, one of the biggest Sundays of the year, and you're here in church. So kudos, you're starting it off right. Like Justin was saying, we're having a big watch party later, so pull through. It's going to be awesome. And I think this is going to be a particularly interesting Super Bowl. And I don't know if anyone else feels like this, but for me, I don't really know who I want to win, but it's more like I know who I want to lose. And see, I've been a Denver Broncos fan my whole life, and that means my whole life I've grown up rooting against the Chiefs. I was rooting against the Chiefs actually about a month ago. I got my dad a couple tickets for Christmas. It ended up being really sweet, but it had some complications to it. And so Dad's being notoriously hard to shop for, I figured I'll just get him a couple tickets. And so I used this app called TickPick. Y'all ever heard of this? It's this app where you can buy tickets and they cut all the processing fees and hidden fees. And so I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And I'm waiting for my tickets to be deposited. I'm waiting for them to get to my account. It says that we'll send them to you all the way up until the day before the game. It's the day before the game. I don't have them. I'll wait, I'm patient. It's the day of the game, and I still don't have them. I'm worried, I'm freaking out. So I pick up the phone, and I call the customer support. They say, Mr. Sheldon, what seems a problem? I said, the problem is I still don't have my tickets. He says, I'm so sorry, the seller never sent them. What we can do is we can either give you some tickets in a similar area, or we could just give you a refund, and we could even throw in a credit. So a credit, how much are we talking? And so me being the bargain hunter that I am, that enjoys a good deal, I go online. And since it's the day of, the Chiefs had already clinched their playoff spot, I see that the ticket prices had dropped. I see that I could actually score some pretty killer seats, row 14, back at the end zone, close to the action, for the same price that I had paid. Seems like a no-brainer to me. The ticket guy is still on the phone. He says, Mr. Sheldon, what do you want me to do for you? What do you want me to do for you? I say, I will take the refund. So I get the refund. I buy these seats. I'm thinking about how close we're going to be to the field. I've never sat this close, this elite status, sitting with the big dogs, close to the action. And we get to the game. We pull up to the game. We walk down to our seats, take a seat. And we were close to the action, but there was one problem, and the only problem I'd say with the seats was that they were in the middle of the field, in the back of the end zone, and that means that there's a giant goalpost obstructing our whole view. My desire to be seen, to be recognized, to have status got in the way of me being able to see. And I think that's this reality that we all see in some way, shape, or form, and that's where we're going today. We desire to be seen rather than to see. So we're going to be picking up today in the Gospel of Mark. We've been going through the Gospel of Mark this whole year, the upside-down kingdom. And let me just tell you where we are picking up. We're going to be picking up at the request of James and John. And what we're going to be doing today is we're looking at this story, this passage, as well as another passage, two stories that seem to have nothing in common, but they're woven together by this single probing question Jesus asks to get straight to the desires of the heart. And so we're picking up verse 35 and the request in James and John. And let me just kind of set the scene for what's happening right before this. So right before this happens, Jesus has just foretold his death for the third time. It's this pattern of events that happens 3 times throughout the Gospel of Mark. The first time, Jesus says, I'm going to die, I'm going to come back. Peter freaks out, he rebukes him. The second time he says it, the disciples are fighting about who's going to be the greatest. And then the third time this happens, They're on their way to Jericho. Jesus drops this bomb again. This is the most vivid account. He's talking about how he's going to be whipped and beaten and flogged. And so we pick up in verse 35 at the request of James and John. And James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came up to him and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What do you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit one at your right hand and one at your left in your glory." So James and John, sons of Zebedee, also known as the sons of thunder, approach Jesus with this bold ask. They're saying, "Hey, Jesus, we got a big favor. Can you please do this for us? Just say yes." And Jesus, being the kind, patient, merciful Jesus he is, he says, "What do you want me to do for you?" And what do they ask? They say, "We want to sit at your right and your left in your glory." They want to be seen. They want the status and the recognition. Jesus is talking about how he's ushering in this new kingdom. This new kingdom's coming, and they want to make sure that they have their spots reserved. And they want to be above everyone else. They want to be significant. What does Jesus say to this? Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or to be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized?" And they said to him, "We are able." And Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink, you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to grant, but is for those for whom it has been prepared." And when the 10 heard it, they began to be indignant at James and John. Jesus says, "You don't got a clue what you're talking about. I just told you about my impending death on the cross, about getting crucified, and your response is, you want to get in on this? You want to get in on that action?" He says, "Are you able to drink from the cup?" And drink from the cup, what this phrase means, it means to share the same fate. He says, "Do you want to share the same fate?" And then he says this baptism, and this baptism he's talking about, baptism, right, is this metaphor of being immersed and submersed in something. And what he's talking about is being immersed in the weight of the world's sins as he hangs upon the cross. Just like, you don't know what you're asking. Is that what you want? So we are able. Yeah, we're in. He says, very well. You guys can be a part of this mission, a part of this kingdom. But there's two things. This is not how the kingdom works. He goes into this lesson and the rest of this passage that could be an entire sermon itself talking about this idea of servanthood. He delivers this line. He says, "The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many." And he says this kingdom looks different, where you don't earn your status and recognition and that gives you power. No, the first will be last. He says it's not for me to hand out, that's for the Father. The Father is going to appoint those he chooses, who he invites into this. But what I want to look at today is the desires of the heart and what we can learn from how they respond to that question. In verse 41 it says, "And when the 10 heard it, they began to be indignant at James and John." And I think this is worth noting, because this word indignant, I didn't really know what that meant, but it's this idea of being annoyed because someone did something or got something you wanted. And the best example I could think of is, say you're in a group and you tell your boy a funny joke and he laughs, and then he repeats it louder for the group and they all laugh and he gets the credit. That is this feeling of being indignant. And so if James and John have this desire, and the rest of the 10 feel indignant, they also have this desire, then I think it's pretty safe to say that we all probably share the same desire. We desire to be seen. I think at our core, As human beings, we all have this desire to be seen, to be known, to be loved, to be recognized. Everybody wakes up and says, I want to be somebody. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to be nobody. Right? And we desire this because if you are seen and you are known, then that makes you important. That gives you value. And I mean, I'm going to be real with you, like this whole week, the thought of me being up here giving me a sermon, like there's a lot of eyes on me right now. It could be so easy for me to want to be up here and to do this for the wrong reason, to make myself known and get the recognition that I want, rather than to make him known. And it's this constant struggle that I think we all face, that we all endure. Do you desire to be seen? What could that look like for you? Could it be the club or the organization you got into that not everyone else did? Could it be the fraternity or sorority that you got into, that in the letters you proudly wear next to your name? Or the job or the internship you landed that you're posting on LinkedIn? It feels good to be reeling in those congratulations. Or maybe it's just social media in general, a place where you create this version and this persona of yourself, and you reel in the likes, the comments, the followers. It feels good when someone posts a picture with us. We all desire to be seen. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. God created us to want to work hard, to be leaders, to be ambitious. But the problem lies when this idea becomes our identity, where we have to strive for the success, to be seen, to be known, because then we will be important. Now, if you want to talk about someone who went their whole life being unseen and being overlooked, let's talk about our boy Bartimaeus. We're picking up in verse 46. Jesus heals blind Bartimaeus. And they came to Jericho, and as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a great crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent, but he cried out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. Who's Bartimaeus? What's going on? So it says Jesus has made it to Jericho, and they're actually on their way out. And he's rolling with his crew. It says a great crowd, actually. It sounds like they added a couple more to the bunch. And there's this guy, Bartimaeus. We don't know much about Bartimaeus. His dad's name is Timaeus. But we know that he's a blind beggar. So what that probably meant was that what his days looked like was sitting outside of the city gates, begging, pleading for mercy, and being at the pity of those who walked by. In this time, there's no disability or anything for him. He is just hopeless and helpless. So Bartimaeus is sitting here. He's used to being walked past, to being overlooked. And then he catches wind that this Jesus of Nazareth is rolling through town. And his response is to cry out, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. And I think the way he acknowledges Jesus is actually very important. Son of David. What son of David means is not that his dad's name was David. No, this is actually a reference to the Old Testament. And the Old Testament is this collection of writing and stories and prophecies. That's the first half of the Bible. It's about the rise, the fall, and God's plan to redeem it all through the coming of a Messiah, the Savior of the world. And what was known about the Messiah is that he would be a descendant of King David. And so by saying son of David, Bartimaeus is acknowledging Jesus to be the the Messiah. And the crowd, they rebuke him. They say, pipe down. Blind beggar, he's at it again. But he don't care. He says it again. Son of David, have mercy on me. And it's actually interesting that he continued to cry out because these are people that he's at their pity and their mercy. He depends on them to provide for them. So the last thing you'd want to do is for him to piss those people off. He don't care. Continuing in verse 49, what happens next? Two of the most powerful words in this whole passage. It says, and Jesus stopped. Jesus, the Messiah, God of the universe. He's on his way to Jerusalem. He's on his way to save the world, but this blind beggar cries out and he stops. It says, and Jesus stopped and said, call him. And they called the blind man, saying to him, take heart, get up, he is calling you. And throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus, and Jesus said to him, what do you want me to do for you? And the blind man said to him, Rabbi, let me recover my sight. And Jesus said to him, go your way, your faith has made you well. And immediately he recovered his sight and followed him along the way. Jesus stops. And at this point, this crowd is so big that he has to call someone to call over Bartimaeus. He's out of earshot. He calls Bartimaeus over. And I think the wildest part of this whole text is the response we see from Bartimaeus. It says Bartimaeus gets up and throwing off his cloak. If you think about it, Bartimaeus is a blind beggar. He doesn't have many possessions. And a cloak is very valuable. That very well might be his only possession, if not at least his most valuable possession. He tosses it to the side, which is also the last thing you want to do if you were a blind person, is to throw your personal belongings in a crowded marketplace. But he throws it off, and he comes to Jesus, and he's face to face with Jesus, and he hits him with this question, what do you want me to do for you? Sound familiar? What do you want me to do for you? He says, Rabbi, let me recover my sight. That's no shocker. He's blind. He wants to see. But I think this word rabbi is also very important because, see, rabbi means teacher. But some translations actually use this word rabboni. And it's this level of rabbi, but it's up one level. Instead of saying teacher or master, it's saying my teacher, my master, my Lord. He continues to acknowledge Jesus for who he is. And he asks to see. And Jesus heals him. He says, go your way, your faith has made you well. And his response is he gets up and immediately he followed Jesus along the way. Do you see how the desires of James and John are different from Bartimaeus? Do you see the parallels? Do you see how they contrast? How do they see Jesus? James and John, they approach Jesus with this entitlement. They see him as a genie in a bottle. They say, God, give me this. We want this. Give us this. But then you have Bartimaeus, who sees Jesus as the Messiah. And he approaches him with this posture of humility. He says, have mercy on me. He sees Jesus for who he is. And I think it's pretty funny, it's pretty ironic that it takes a blind man to see Jesus for who he truly is. What do they desire from Jesus? James and John say, we want to sit at your right and your left. They want to be seen. Say, God, bless what we're doing here, what we want. Give us the status and recognition and honor that we crave. But Bartimaeus, he says, I just want to see. I just want to see. He doesn't say, I want you to build my kingdom. He says, I want to see, because I want to see you and I want to see your kingdom clear. And I think we learn a lot about Bartimaeus because of the desire of his heart and what he does after. As a blind beggar, he can't do anything. He's hopeless. He's helpless. But he recognizes Jesus for who he is, and he asks for the one thing that he needs to be able to get up and to follow him, to see him more for truly who he is. Immediately, he recovered his sight and followed him on the way. Bartimaeus gets it. He gets it. Bartimaeus asks to see Jesus because he knows he's already seen. He knows he's used to being overlooked and for people walking past him. That's been his whole life. He knows he's not seen by the world, but he's seen by the one true God of the universe, the Messiah. He sees him. He knows he's not going to find it anywhere else. See, he gets it. He understands, because the world says, if you're seen, you're important. If you're seen, then you're important. And Jesus just says, I see you. And you are important. Bartimaeus just says, Jesus, just show me more. Let me see you clearly. There's this Tim Keller quote that I absolutely love, and I think it really ties all of this together. It reads, to be loved but not known is comforting but superficial. To be known and not loved is our greatest fear. But to be fully known and truly loved is, well, a lot like being loved by God. It is what we need more than anything. It liberates us from pretense, humbles us out of our self-righteousness, and fortifies us for any difficulty life can throw at us. I mean, how true is that? Nobody wants to be loved and not known. But our biggest fear is for someone to truly know us and to reject us. But at our core, what we need more than anything is to be fully known and truly loved. Bartimaeus gets this. He knows the one true place he's going to find it. It's this love that liberates us from the pretense. It humbles us from our self-righteousness and strengthens us through life's challenges that we can depend on. And when we recognize this love of God, it satisfies our souls. And we say it every week. We are a room full of broken and perfect people. And we don't get it right. We have a God who meets us in that. Right? And like Bartimaeus, right? Bartimaeus wasn't perfect, but he has this bold faith to step out, to say, Jesus, let me see you. And when the reality that we are seen and we are known by the God of the universe, when we believe that, when we let that penetrate our heart, it changes everything. It changes everything. It changed me. I don't by any means have it all figured out or know what I'm doing. But when I came into college, I think I had even less of an idea. I didn't know the Lord. I didn't know what I was doing. And I quickly got swept up in any place that could give me the validation and the attention and the recognition that I wanted. I joined a fraternity, Neely, the sales program. They're all great things, great people. I got awards and recognition and titles, but those are never going to truly satisfy. There's only one level of recognition and being seen and being known that will truly satisfy the desires of our soul. So what would you ask for? The God of the universe, the Messiah, standing right in front of you. He looks you in the eye and he says, "What do you want me to do for you?" What are you going to say? Are you going to ask him to bless your agenda and your kingdom and what you want and what you desire? Would you say, "Jesus, I just want to see you. I want more of you. I want to know you, to understand you more. Can you give me the one thing that I need to truly follow you?" And it's actually pretty ironic if you think about this question. Because what do we need Jesus to do most is the thing that he's already done. It's the thing that he's going to do when he meets Bartimaeus. It's what he's on his way to go do, and it's what he's already done for us. You see, we are broken and we are imperfect. And because of that, because we're not perfect, there's this eternal separation from God. But God said, no, that's not good enough. That's not where the story ends. And so he sent his son, Jesus. He sends him to the earth to walk the same earth as you and I, to live this perfect life. He's leading this charge on this upside down kingdom. He's flipping rules on their heads. He's calling people out. He's seeing people that have never been seen. He's loving people who have never been loved. All so that he could roll into Jerusalem to be arrested, to be whipped, to be flogged, to be beaten, so he could carry a cross to the top of a hill, so he could breathe his final breaths with you and me in mind. And that's not where the story ends, because Jesus was laid to rest in a tomb. But 3 days later, he rises. He conquers death. He conquers sin, all so that this relationship of being known and truly loved by the God of the universe, so we can experience that. So we can know that. Aren't we all like Bartimaeus? Hopeless, helpless, blind. But what happens when we recognize the Messiah for who he is and what he's done, and take this bold step of faith and just ask, God, show me more. God, give me the one thing that's holding me back, that's preventing me from following you. See, we don't have to desire to be seen, because we already are. You know what my favorite part of that game was? It wasn't the Bronco win. It wasn't the foot-long hot dog. It wasn't even the seats. See, what I didn't see then was I got to spend a day with my dad. Someone who I love and who loves me and who knows me. And he doesn't care about the status that I hold or the seats that I finessed. No, he just cares about me. And he knows me. And I got to spend time with someone like that. And that's the type of love that I think is just a tiny glimpse into the love that Jesus has allowed us to have because of what he did and the love that we can experience from the Father. Let me pray. Father, I thank you for your Son. I thank you for how you sent him to this earth to suffer for us, all so that we could be known and seen by you. God, and I pray wherever we're at, whether that is we're like James and John and we so desire the status from the world, and we look every place we can find it, God, or whether we're like Bartimaeus, and we're just used to people walking past us, to being overlooked. God, may we just see that you see us. You know us. God, and that is the sweet, sweet gift of the gospel. That it's nothing we can earn, that we don't have to strive for. God, that the thing we need most is what your Son has already done. God, may we desire to see you, to see more of you, to see you for who you truly are, God. May we count everything else as rubbish compared to the surpassing worth of knowing you, Christ Jesus, our Lord. In your Son's precious name, amen.